Well, welcome to the AAM Environment Climate Network webinar. And we invite you to become AAM members if you're not already and join our network to hear more about exciting programs such as this one. Sustainability Officers, the Museum Context. I am Joyce Lee, President of Indigo JLD Green Health and Chair of the Environment Climate Network. I'm honored to be your host today. And Earth Day is going to be coming in April next month. We will have more resources for you if you would like to see your museum go green. Look for more info on the chat function. Well, in addition to partners at the regional museum associations and the state museum associations, we are also grateful to the National Museum Directors Council in England for their support in this program as well. I would also like to mention that we are fortunate to have to be given this space and time today, and nothing should be taken for granted. Let's not forget that this sustainability conversation can only be had during peacetime, where there is armed conflict around the world that is most disruptive to climate action, particularly for the museum sector. So we would like to remember those whose institutions are at risk today. I have here as my guest Nancy Bechtel from the Smithsonian Institute and Jean Savitsky from the Museum of Modern Art, New York. They are sustainability officers for their respective institutions. Museums are unique in that they are conveners and ambassadors while also having a business model. And we know that these two accomplished professionals are from the East Coast of the United States. Their institutions are not only anchors in their communities, but also national and international. So we welcome all the audience from different time zones today. And I know that we will learn a lot. At their recommendations, we will start with colleague Sarah Cassom from the Victoria and Albert Museum in the UK. This time is outside of her office hours already, and we're so thankful that Sarah has prepared a video for us. To catch a glimpse of what is being done across the pond, Sarah Cassom is the Sustainability Officer at the V&A in London and has taken leadership in climate. So shall we roll the video here?
Hi there, my name is Sarah Casson and I'm the Sustainability Lead at the V&A. I'm really pleased to be able to talk to you and just do a quick 5-minute presentation to tell you about what we're doing. I'm on a 2-year fixed-term contract and my role is to work across the organisation to embed sustainability expertise and to catalyse systemic change in operations and behaviours. So I've got a few slides to share very quickly. Okay, so the Victoria and Albert Museum, it's a museum of art, design and performance, and we've got a permanent collection of over 2.3 million objects span over 5,000 years of human creativity. And this is our gorgeous building in South Kensington, where I sometimes work. And we also have a Museum of Childhood, which is now the Young V&A in Bethnal Green in East London. We have partnerships with the Wedgwood in Staffordshire and also in Dundee in Scotland and Shekou in China. And we also have some new buildings being currently constructed in Stratford, a new collection centre and a brand new museum. So our estate is expanding, which obviously brings some really interesting questions to light when we're thinking about our carbon footprint and sustainability in general. The approach that we've taken at the V&A is very much about listening and learning. It's a very systems thinking approach. So there's a great quote from actually its curator at the Smithsonian who said that addressing climate change isn't about putting on one great show, it's about systematic assessment of the entire institution, from its material relations to its knowledge production practices, object interpretation, display aesthetics, visitor engagement to community relations. And so we're really kind of taking that systems approach where instead of kind of fiddling around the edges, we're thinking of the organisation as a whole. And these are like the kind of top 6 things that I've learned about approaching sustainability in a museum. Um, it's really good to do lots of research, but don't let perfect be the enemy of action. This is a journey, and everyone needs to start and just start now. It's all about being open, transparent, and also very much about leveraging existing knowledge and enthusiasm. Definitely in the V&A, so much is already going on, as is happening in lots of other museums. It kind of just needs to be brought together and kind of articulated, and kind of empowering people to take things to the next level. And also, there's no point duplicating work. There's lots going on in our sector, but also across sectors, and in lots of different other fields, from higher education to government to business. Everyone's doing some great stuff on sustainability, and it's really kind of seeing how we can take those good ideas and see what works for museums. And the other thing is there's just so much that we could do. It's how do we prioritise, and how do we actually think where we can have the most influence and the most impact. So we created a sustainability plan. Very exciting. It was signed off last September. It's a 3-year plan to start with, and we've identified key issues and actions that we're going to prioritise over these 3 years in the context of a long-term net zero target. So lots of actions are on a pathway, and for example, we need to find some data or produce guidelines in a particular area, and then the changes can be made and embedded. Because we all know sustainability is really kind of about decision making. It's not just about green bling or a little bit of renewables. It's got to be much deeper than that, and embedding it amongst all our operations and behaviours is a huge challenge. But we've agreed next steps, and we've assigned responsibility to our directors, and we've had approval from our trustees. So there's buy-in at the highest level, but there's also been lots of grassroots support in putting this together. And for us, it was really important to kind of tie sustainability to the very mission of the V&A, and that intergenerational equity of sustainable development is really important to our organisation. And in a time of kind of climate and biodiversity crisis, bringing together the arts and sciences is really important, and that's what the V&A is about. This is our overview, and we're enabling people through art, design and performance to contribute to a thriving planet and to shape sustainable futures. And we focused on 3 areas: place, people, programme, and categorised our actions into these subheadings. And to start with, place, we're going to reduce the negative impact of how we deliver our activities at buildings, our estate, and we're targeting net zero emissions by 2035 for scope 1, 2 and 3. And we know that this is a huge challenge, and we've done some really interesting carbon footprinting and decarbonisation work to get us to help us to back up this target and work out what we need to do. And here are some of the actions that we're taking in this particular area. So we're looking at things like climate risk assessments, we're looking at sustainability guidelines for exhibitions and projects, and we're looking at operational building performance targets, and really building meaningful sustainability criteria into all of our specifications. Under people, this is for me a particular passion. It's really important to enable and empower everybody to play their part. Everyone in a museum is a village. It's full of lots of different professions, but everyone is an expert in their own area. And so we have lots of different ways to kind of unlock that potential amongst our people, but also working with partners in the wider sector to embed sustainable decision making and share skills. So we're part of lots of networks, and we have a strategic sustainability steering group, we have a grassroots sustainability coordinators network, we run a learning and development programme. Over the last year, we've had 600 hours of sustainability focused learning on a variety of topics, from kind of waste and recycling all the way to carbon literacy. So this is an area I feel particularly passionate about. Area is programme, and this is really about how we engage our audiences in issues of planetary limits and climate justice. And we really want to have messages of hope. We're focusing on people's agency to take positive action. So this isn't about just having sustainability themed exhibitions. It's really thinking about how we engage with our audiences in all aspects. This could be from festivals and installations, learning, workshops, our acquisitions, how we interpret our objects, all kinds of things. And so much has been going on already. So this plan is available on our website. I will provide a link to it at the end. And we also have a blog which shows how we're enacting various elements. So just to finish off, I think this is really important. We're taking an intersectional approach to sustainability. And so that example of deeper systems thinking. And so we're kind of looking at how sustainability intersects with race, gender, class, and so on. And we had a great training session that looked at kind of decarbonisation and decolonisation, and the connections between, both about structural change, distribution of power, wealth. They all feature very strongly, as do conversations around respect. So it's really important to see how museums are going to use their position and their collections to engage audiences in meaningful conversations, how we connect with the past and how we shape our collective futures. And that's all. Thank you very much. So please do have a look at our website and download our plan, take a read, see what we're up to, and feel free to contact me. Thank you very much.
That's a great message about intersectional sustainability. And there seems to also be a nice symmetry between what Sarah talks about people, place, and program with scopes 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Before we invite today's guests on, I know that our team had prepared a couple of polling questions. So maybe we can share that on the screen. So our speakers, if you like to, turn on the camera now, have a bit more understanding of our audience today. That's great. Hi, Jean. And Nancy, feel free to put your camera on as well. So I guess, thank you, Kate, for running this. Once everybody has answered the questions, I think that would also help Jean and Nancy see the organizations where you're coming from.
Someone's going to have to mention the results to us, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think that the results should actually come as a chart, if I'm correct.
I'm just going to give it a few more minutes and then I should be able to publish the results of the poll.
That is great. And while we are doing that, I would do a quick intro of Jean, whom I have known as a leader for a while now at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. She oversaw some major expansion at the Museum of Modern Art and was also, the museum is a recent award winner of the Sustainability Excellence Award at the AAM Environment Climate Network. And now she will be talking to us about the sustainability plan.
Thank you, Joyce, for that introduction. Should I wait for the poll results or those coming?
Well,
Yeah,
I think
our participation has slowed, so I'm gonna go ahead and
okay.
the results. Is everyone able to see those?
Wow, this is all very encouraging. We do have under 50 employees, 24%, mid-sized museums, 50 to 150 approximately, about another quarter, and over half of them are over 150 employees. So I think that's a great way to understand where you're all coming from. And more encouragingly, we have 58% of organizations having a sustainability function in-house, whether it's an officer or usually those are interdisciplinary functions anyways, or a green team. So great. And only 8% are unsure. And there are institutions likely here to learn about what you do. So I did the introduction quickly, Jean, and if you like to unmute, I think we would like to invite you to present.
Okay, let me share my screen. Great. Sorry, let's go to the beginning. So Joyce, I just want to thank you for the opportunity for allowing me, on behalf of my team, to present the work that we're doing at MoMA to this larger audience. It's a privilege to be able to share our work. And again, thank you again for the award that you so graciously bestowed on MoMA a few months ago. So just to kind of set the context, the expansion project that I worked on with my colleague Ileana Glicklick, who's on this call, I believe, and our other colleague Jason Smith, achieved LEED Platinum certification when we finished that project in 2019. And that became the starting point for us to go forward with our sustainability initiatives. And in January 2020, our director, Glenn Lowry, came to us and came to the institution and said, I want to be the most sustainable museum that we can possibly be. So he tasked myself and my colleagues, Jason and Ileana, with leading that work. And I know we're very, very fortunate to be able to be dedicated to working on sustainability initiatives for MoMA, because I know so many other institutions, it's just one of many things that somebody needs to do. But here we're really focused on developing this plan and moving it forward and getting the results that we need. So, ironically, this, like I said, the announcement from our director came in January 2020. We went into the pandemic shortly after that, which actually allowed us to really dive into what was our plan going to be. And during that time of COVID, when everybody was kind of locked down, we reached out to what ended up being more than 50 institutions. And they were, well, not only institutions, cultural institutions, real estate leaders, thought leaders in the industry, cities, governments, policymakers, to understand what would go into a sustainability plan, what were lessons learned that people could share with us, and how could we really frame our thinking around this. And we developed a really detailed framework, which is what we needed to be able to move the work forward, but it distilled down into 3 areas. And it's kind of interesting to have seen Sarah's presentation on the Victoria and Albert Museum and to see the similarities that there were, our plan kind of aligns a little bit. So our framework broke down into 3 areas: energy, waste, and people. In the energy sector, we wanted to look at how do we reduce what we were using, and the energy that we still needed to use, how do we optimize that? How do we buy it in the best way? How do we introduce a mix of green energy into that in a responsible way? And kind of dovetailing with this reduction that we were looking to do, New York City has a Climate Mobilization Act, which is called Local Law 97 to those of us in New York, which has targets in 2024 and 2030 for buildings over 25,000 square feet to reduce their emissions by a factor, for us it's 30%, or to receive some pretty significant fines. So we have to comply with that Climate Mobilization Act. And we also need to reduce our energy, just even from a budgetary perspective, and looking what's going on in the energy market right now. It's just a responsible thing for us to do. Our director also said, kind of threw out the challenge to us to reduce our waste by 50% by 2025. I think he started out thinking that was just going to be kind of, the landfill waste and the recycling waste, but it really, it's broadened out into kind of waste overall, and the waste in our operations, and how are we doing things, and how could we be doing things differently. And at the end of that, we need to also engage our colleagues and our visitors to make sure that what we're doing resonates with them, that they are engaged in our efforts and supporting our efforts, and that what we do supports the overall mission of the institution. So we developed a sustainability task force, which is interdepartmental, because, like I said, my colleagues and I put together the framework, but really the success and the projects are going to come from those who know their individual operations. That's where we're going to find our savings and our opportunities to improve efficiencies. We started with a team of people from these departments. That team has ebbed and flowed, and it took a little bit of time to find a really core group of dedicated people, which is what we have now, that are completely supportive in moving all of this work forward. But again, it was super important to have cross-departmental representation. So kind of the highlights of what we're doing. We partnered early on with a group called the Foodprint Group, which is an excellent group that's focused on waste. They really know the market. And they helped us kind of figure out what we should be doing to be able to reach this goal of 50% reduction by 2025. And that baseline was 2018, just to be clear about that. So one of the big changes that we made, we implemented on-site separation. We used to have single stream where everything would go in. We'd rely on our hauler to do the separation. but now we're doing it on site. And we've also added not only landfill and recycling, but we also have an organic stream. We also removed everybody's waste can from their seat. So we have centralized waste stations in many convenient locations. So everybody has to get up and throw out their waste in a centralized location. So number one, it allows us to really track what we're doing in a much better way, but it also, we're all thinking differently about what are we putting in the waste can, because you actually have to take that waste and move it to a different location. So it's been interesting to see how the combination of these two things has really helped move the needle in moving our waste away from landfill. So you can see some statistics here, how much organics and how much recycling and how much cardboard we've been able to move. And our organics are going to a farm up in the Catskills, so we know exactly where they're going. It's not going to an industrial site, which is a kind of an interesting connection for us to have and a good story to tell. And then just the metric tons of CO2, we've translated that with the help of Footprint Group into some statistics that are kind of interesting, which allows us to communicate this with our staff and our visitors in a way that resonates with people. In the energy space, we started out rolling up our sleeves and doing a really in-depth energy audit in our main campus in Manhattan, which is the museum, and then in Queens, in New York, where we have a large storage facility with very tight environmental conditions. And in doing that audit, working very closely with our operations and engineering teams, we surfaced about 200 opportunities to reduce building inefficiencies. So that's kind of the word I don't like, but sort of a low-hanging fruit, which is going to allow us to go in there and kind of change the way we're doing things. We also developed a series of energy conservation projects, and working with our engineering consultant, have put those projects into a plan in a way that the success of the completion of one project builds on the next one. So we're doing the projects in a very distinct, succinct order. It's a multi-year plan, so it allowed us to really be able to quantify the savings that each project is allowing us to build with the next project. And it allowed us to present to our board a well thought out, a plan with a lot of metrics around ROI and payback in a way that they could help us fund it. So some of the things that we're doing, we're looking at our chilled and condenser water system, and to allow them to operate more efficiently, we're restoring the filtration on that. There was a campus-wide lighting upgrade project that had started. We had done all the gallery work, and now we're going to finish the back of house work this year. We looked at our steam system. There was a lot of opportunity there to reduce the steam waste and to reintroduce the energy from the condensate back into heating, which will be a project that we're about to undertake. We're looking at our chiller plant, updating the plant, improving efficiency and the performance there. And then the major thing that's going to kind of underscore everything is we're looking to replace our building management system. And I have a feeling there are probably people on this call that we've spoken to that have given us a lot of great information about how their buildings are operating, the technology that they're using, the things that we should be looking for and looking out not to do, and which hardware, which software, which interfaces we should be looking at, because we want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for the future. We're going to be making sure that we have artificial intelligence, fault detection, that'll allow us to really react real time to building performance issues. So in addition to going, and getting funding for these projects, we've also rolled up our sleeves and gone out into the market. There's a lot of third-party incentives. We've applied for grants. We know that these projects are expensive, and we've been able to take advantage of money that's out there to help offset the cost of some of these things that we're doing. Like I said, it really is a collaboration. We can set the framework, but we need the expertise of the individual departments to move this forward. So just some examples of what we've done. We're working with our conservation team to look at filtration requirements to achieve energy reductions. And what could we be doing differently? What is more state of the art now than when the building was built? Not the expansion, but the main building was built years ago. Again, working with conservation and our operations team. When we're looking at equipment replacement, how are we looking at that differently now through the lens of sustainability, instead of doing in-kind replacements for equipment at the end of its useful life? How could we look at this differently? In June of last year, Emilio Ambaz, the architect, endowed the museum to create the Ambaz Institute for the joint study of the natural and built environment, and Carson Chan was brought on last summer to lead this initiative and this institute. And we're working very closely with Carson and his team to develop and deliver projects together, to engage with our audience and our scholars, and Carson, in turn, supporting the work that we're doing kind of on the ground and helping champion that in a larger way out into the world. We spent a lot of time looking for a dashboard to report our success, to manage our progress. And we found that the best result was going to be working with our IT team in-house to develop that dashboard. They're working on a large data project for the museum, and we've kind of tagged on with them to help create this dashboard that will allow us to report what we're doing in sustainability in a context of the broader museum operations, programs, programming, et cetera. We're working with our exhibition design and planning team to help support them in their zero waste exhibitions initiative. They've got an initiative in place where they can achieve 95% diversion from exhibitions, and we're there to support them along the way. Working with our partner Art Food, who runs all of our restaurants, to reduce the single-use dishware in our staff cafeteria. And we've also implemented a department-wide material reuse events, which is an opportunity for departments to give away things that they're not using. And we've had 2 really successful events giving away furniture and giving away unused and unwanted AV equipment to our staff. And it keeps it out of the landfill. It gives it a second use and a second life. And it engages all of our colleagues in what we're doing as an institution to reduce our waste. It's been pretty exciting. What we learned in all of the conversations that we had in those 50 institutions that we talked to is really it's important to share what we're doing and to share our progress. So we focused a lot on how do we get the word out of what we're doing. For our internal use and for our engineers, we are adding a lot of measurement and verification into our building system. So again, we can understand what we're doing, understand how our systems are operating, and frankly, how things like exhibitions or events or things that happen outside of the day-to-day operations of the museum impact the way the building systems function. Like I said, we team with IT to develop our dashboard for reporting, which will be internal and eventually probably externally focused. We have a monthly newsletter to staff where we update progress on things that we're doing. We also bring in just kind of information in the broader world of sustainability and energy, maybe things that people want to know about new materials, new energy sources, things that are happening at the environmental or government level that would be of interest to our colleagues. We have a dedicated presence on our homepage for our internal staff site where we just, again, post a lot of information, constant updates, so staff can always see what's happening and give us their thoughts. We've integrated our communication strategy with the Ambaz Institute. So again, getting our message out to the broader arts community and public. And then our colleagues' feedback, which is frankly one of the most important things, through sustainabilityprojects@moma.org email address, where we can get information, thoughts, ideas, things that are working, things that aren't working from everybody at MoMA. And it's been a terrific way to keep everybody engaged, to respond to what we're doing, to tweak what we're doing, and to be able to continue to build our platform and our work. Finally, one of the things that we're going to be focused on over the next few months is understanding our carbon footprint, because we do get asked a lot internally and externally, can we be carbon neutral? What would it take to be carbon neutral? And what we're seeing on the graph on the left is really it's going to be difficult, with the exception of just reducing how we're using our energy or the amount of energy that we're using, to do anything differently, because we're so dependent on third-party providers of steam, electricity, and gas. So right there, it just says we've got to address our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, we've got to just use less and become more efficient. The Scope 3 emissions, we're just kind of going down the rabbit hole of that now. And it's an interesting journey that we're going to go on, because what we want to make sure is that we identify those emissions that we can control. So we're just trying to quantify our net, and what does it mean? What does Scope 3 mean for us? Things that we can control, recognizing the things that we can't, and then figuring out what the carbon footprint is. Because we've made a conscious decision ourselves to say that we are not going to become carbon neutral by buying offsets. We are going to see how close to carbon neutrality we can get by operating differently and doing things in a more sustainable and efficient way. So Joyce, I'll turn it back to you to turn it to Nancy.
Thank you so much. I think your focus on energy and waste gave so much clarity. And having worked for a city administration, the fact that the city is going electrification friendly, you are really taking a big step in the direction. So again, thank you for sharing. And we are now inviting Nancy, which has an even bigger campus in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere, to take a look at your plan. I would like to say that when your climate change action plan was published, I think it really, by making it that level of detail public, you are really taking leadership in a whole other area where we can all learn from. And that also invites accountability. So that's very admirable. Thank you, Nancy. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Joyce. And it is a pleasure to join the stage with Jean and Sarah. We celebrated International Women's Day yesterday, and I feel like, Joyce, we're celebrating International Women's Day today with just this incredible all-women panel. So it's just great fun to be with everyone today. So we're going to talk a little differently, just to kind of set the stage for a second, and to complement Jean and Sarah's program. I sort of chose to sort of go down the lane of sort of planning and policy direction, because I think as a part of any, good sustainability program, really, no matter where you're coming from, whether it is a large institution that you represent or a small institution that you represent, you really need to be thinking in terms of a little bit of a strategic direction. And I feel like Jean covered that beautifully in her presentation, as did Sarah. So the next slide sort of talks about how we framed our climate change action within the Smithsonian. And this was really to look at it Smithsonian-wide, whether we are a research institute in Panama or in Edgewater, Maryland, or whether we're a museum that is on the Mall or in New York City. So all of those locations, we're looking at sustainability across the board in both of these documents. Now, the sustainability plans, they are online at sustainability.gov. This is through our Council of Environmental Quality, part of the White House Environmental Action, as well as our Office of Management and Budget. So they work together for all of the government entities, and Smithsonian Institution is just one entity that participates in all this government work. So Joyce mentioned our climate action plan is online, and you can go online and see sustainability plans just through 2020. The 2021 year has not been posted, but you can see years of sustainability plans, and that really captures all of your energy savings and also your energy goals. And the climate action plan is more broad-based. So the next slide will tell you a little bit about how broad-based. So when we pulled this climate action plan together, and this will be an annual requirement, so we are actually gathering as a team and starting to draft our next year's plan already. And this will also come out later this summer. And in this plan, we look holistically at the Smithsonian. So from our research programs to our exhibition, our education, certainly the facilities and the infrastructure, and that's where my lane, that's where I come from at the Smithsonian, but we are working Smithsonian-wide and pulling this plan together and also looking administratively at our processes. And then the next slide talks about, we were given the opportunity to talk about specific topic areas that every agency, every organization was interested in. And this was really areas of the Smithsonian that we are interested in. So we built in specific action that correlated to these three topic areas. So the next slide also talks in terms of what do we do? So we gather this in a plan, but then to bring it down to each of the individual 19 museums that we operate every day, as well as our 9 research stations that are located around the world. This particular master planning is how you take that global sustainability program and move it into the Air and Space Museum or the American History Museum. Every individual organization has its own master planning, and embedded in that master plan is where we really drive that sustainability change. We drive to become as green as possible. Next slide, please. In addition to master planning and the climate action plan, we also did a deep dive that we called the climate adaptation planning, and this was around sea level rise. We were very interested in how was the sea level rising across the world, right, going to affect our properties in particular. And we started in 2015 this work, and we're still not done. Our last piece of this work we hope to do in our properties that we oversee in the country of Panama. Next slide, please. So this really gets into looking at, this is a particular shot of a global shot of our national mall. And as you project 100-year storms, 200-year storms, how would that water move? And this is surge water that would be from a storm, as well as just the overlay of the intensity of storms, where just a lot of rain comes down. And of course, we're all experiencing this. Just, I think last week, it was in Queensland in Australia, and the week before that was somewhere else. And so we're seeing, when you have that intensity of storms, what that can do to flood issues. Well, we're studying that and then looking again through that master planning process into the individual. What are we going to do at each of the sites, whether I'm at the National Zoo or whether I'm at the American History Museum? What am I going to do at each site? Next slide, please. And this gets into, I'm just going really high level planning down into the more and more refined as I move through this. And we have Smithsonian directives that actually drive our sustainability program, and it's embedded into our directives itself. So one of our directives on building with sustainable design is to literally make a requirement that everything we're going to design is going to try to seek a minimum of LEED Gold certification. So we don't always make that goal, but that's the goal that we go into every major project with. And then, of course, that's trying to drive as energy savings as possible. And we need to do even more, right? More aggressive than what we've done before. So we did LEED Gold. That was back in 2014. And we're literally looking at that right now with a revision that will be more aggressive and more towards net zero. Next slide, please. Okay, so to take these policies and all of this action planning and studies and to build it to look granularity at our individual locations, I want to just take a trip to our Edgewater, Maryland campus. And this is under Tuck Hines' direction as our director there. And it is his vision to build out a net zero campus. And so every single project we work on in that campus, so that he's really walking the talk, as we're all trying to do, not just doing all that amazing environmental science that he's doing, but also trying to build out a facility that will literally walk that talk. Next slide, please. And so we have built a LEED Platinum lab. And of course, this opened in 2015. And we're building out facilities now, maintenance yards right now for him, and also some cottages, some scientist cottages, where we're trying to make sure that they're literally net zero, and maybe even a little net positive if we do it right. Next slide, please. And that just shows you where that scientific campus is being mapped out. So you see it's in a master plan first, and then of course it's project after project trying to build out that master plan and that vision that he has for that campus. The next slide, I think we move to American history. Yes, and so what are we doing at American history? I showed you those climate adaptation plans earlier, which really showed a serious problem with potential flooding at our American History Museum. So the next slide, we're actually in the process of trying to build out, this just shows some of the planning that we're doing through our master planning and studying process, trying to see what we can do to try to hold that water back, because that is so low on and into the floodplain. Next slide, please. And I think that's it. So I tried to, Joyce, just showcase some of our examples, and mainly, you know, how you have to really look at it globally, right, when you're trying to start a sustainability program.
Wow. The kind of planning that you talk about is so comprehensive and addresses so many different types of infrastructure and facilities you have. And resiliency now is almost a must-do for museums now, resilience planning. And I think you showed that by starting early, putting projects in place is a really good move going forward. So thank you again, Nancy. I would like to invite Jean to come on. That's wonderful. And I also would be remiss if we do not acknowledge our ECN team. We have been working on this webinar for a little while now. And Kate Tallman and Rachel Morris have been wonderful. And thank you, Kate and Rachel. Rachel would also be coming on later to pick your questions and also bring it to our panelists. So please put your questions in the Q&A box if you do, so we can have a larger conversations towards the end of the program. So I think I'm talking to some of the largest institutions in the country. You are now also working with your board of directors and trustees. How do you think what you're doing could really add value to museums that are smaller than you are, medium-sized museums, smaller museums? What do you think are most critical to try to carry the message forward?
I'll start, Jean, and then Jean will go on. I would just say what's most important is that we share. I'm meeting Sarah for the first time and seeing her video and wanting to contact her as soon as we hang up to get a copy of her sustainability plan. The more I know, when we were working on our climate action plan, we went immediately online to just see what do other plans look like, because you get ideas from these other people's plans. And then that's when I think you try to bring it into your own institution. After you have the idea, then you try to figure out, well, okay, how do I do it where I am? And what Jean said with her when she was just going through her waste program, I'm making notes because I want to copy some of what she's done in developing her waste program. So I'd say sharing. And Joyce, the program you're holding today is just an excellent example of how we can do that.
Nancy, I agree with you, because that's how we started our whole initiative, was going out and learning what other people are doing. So it's really having the conversation. But I think for us to be able, the success that we've had and to be able to move some of our projects forward is to be able to show the return on investment. How much are we going to save? Why do we need to do it? How, what are the metrics behind it? Because these things are undertakings in a smaller or medium-sized institution, and even MoMA, which is larger. The money is not infinite, and there are a lot of priorities for dollars. And I think that's really important, to come with a good business case to understand, to be able to present why.
That is great. I think follow the dollars always helps, and it is so true. No matter how big or small your museums, you have trash, right? So that's looking at it from a positive angle. It is a great way to start. Maybe, Nancy, if you'd like to address more about resiliency, how has it changed over the years? I think museums had been here for a long time, and we are going into the future for hundreds of years. Love to hear a little bit more about how all of that evolved over the years.
Well, I think for many of us, it probably evolves from some emergency that you're faced with. I know with us, we had a major flood in 2006. That was a result of an intense storm that dumped a lot of water on the city, and the city of DC could not handle the volume of water, and the water started to come up, through the drains into people's buildings. And honestly, that triggered us to really think in terms of, oh my goodness, we have collections that are stored in those basements. Those basements, the water was threatening to come in. And in all honesty, had we not had staff there to actually manage that flood, we could have had collections damage. So that's really what triggered us, I think, to really start thinking in terms of building with resiliency, or revitalizing a building to increase resiliency. And I also think it gets back to Jean's point on return on investment. Cleaning up after an emergency, right? And sometimes it's not possible if you have collections damage to clean that up. But if you have facilities damage, that costs a lot of money for remediation after a damaging flood. So it behooves you, right, to prevent the water from coming in the first place. Now that takes a little bit of money up front, but you can map out the life cycle savings that you're going to receive from doing something like that. So I think that resiliency, and you just have to look at it broad based too, like everyone's risks are different. Certain parts of the country, it's more of a fire risk than a flood risk, right? So everybody's risks are different.
And Jean, New York City has its own share of flooding as well. And I wonder if you had looked into that and how is that going to figure into your overall planning, and
Well,
what are some of the
yeah, we have less of an issue with, in terms of where our building is located, fortunately, and where our infrastructure for our buildings are located. We have less of an issue with being concerned about flooding. What we are addressing is really end of life of equipment and risk mitigation around that, where the investment needs to be made now in equipment that's 20, 25, 30 years old that we can no longer get parts for. So it's a resiliency within ourselves almost to be able to develop the plan to get ourselves set for the future while keeping in mind the energy initiatives and ways to make sure that we're buying efficient systems and mitigating the risk to our collection.
Well, thank you. And for those who are from the West Coast in the audience, if you have particular stories to tell about mitigating fire and resilience planning in that, please feel free to share. And I will share my own story that one museum that we work with, in fact, had done that work, and how it was put into practice was actually all of that work was very well used during a fire of a neighboring building. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a wildfire, but all of the planning that had taken place about reducing smoke, about saving the collections, all work very well in an emergency planning scenario when your next door building is on fire. So moving on, we would like to maybe ask some of more of a personal questions. You have come to this role, and how do you particularly co-opt everyone or work with other departments to make your work, as successful as possible, knowing that this role is a newer function in the museum world? And are there particular, metrics of a success that you would like to share, whether they're quantitative or qualitative?
Okay, so Jean, I would say our metrics are embedded in our sustainability plans. So if you go online again to look at sustainability plans throughout the federal government, you'll see how we measure our success when it comes to greenhouse gas reduction, or trying to green the fleet, to electrify the fleet, all of those types of, and even to our waste and how much is we're able to recycle and avert from the landfill. And I saw in the chat, people talked in terms of, well, what system do you use for tracking that? And my guess is, Joyce, probably everyone on this call is probably using a different system. Unfortunately, there's so many out there where you can track this. We're big Tableau fans at the Smithsonian, but really you could use any system you want. The point is, track it. I do believe that monitoring this and continuously metricing your data is absolutely important. It needs to be communicated throughout the entire staff, as well as the leadership of each of the institutions, so that the boards understand your successes and actually also understand where you're struggling. Jean had mentioned, and the reason I'm going to reach out to her on waste as soon as we get off the phone is we've been having a very hard time trying to get at the Smithsonian past that 50% for waste diversion, and we're trying to move actually towards 80% is our new goal. And boy, oh boy, has that been a struggle to really work that. But you have to keep at it. And I'd also say you want your goals to be, you just want to almost have that reach goal, right? And just keep working towards it and just trying to get your whole institution and all the staff. Sustainability needs to be led by someone, but honestly, it's all hands on deck. It's every staff member, and even your visitors have to get on board.
Nancy, we have successes, but I'm not going to say it was easy.
No,
It's not been easy
no,
around
no.
waste. I mean, it's been rolling up our sleeves and really, just staying on top of it and continually communicating and, going through doing our own personal waste audits and looking to see what's working, what's not, where is there confusion, signage, how is our signage right, where are people not understanding. So it definitely is, it's an effort. But I think, Joyce, to your point, how do you get, for us to be able to get everybody engaged? I mean, again, we're fortunate. Our our board is 100% behind this. We have an ESG committee within our board. So, and Glenn Lowry, again, making the statement that this is just part of our mission. It's going to be part of what the institution is all about. So everybody is rallying around that. We're about to come out with a strategic sustainability statement that will be on our website and public facing. So we are all, again, going to align our businesses around this. But then at a more tactical level, I said we do have the sustainability committee, and we started out with a group of people, and not everybody stayed on. Some people were less engaged and dropped off, and it was an evolution. And now we have a core group that really wants to move this forward and understands, how it's going to benefit themselves, how it's going to benefit themselves, their business lines, from a reputational perspective, but also from, it's just better to do things in a more efficient, more effective way perspective. And again, I think, to align with what Nancy was saying, it's everybody aligning behind the goal and around the goal. And I think people are definitely interested. The majority of people are interested in doing the right thing.
Wonderful. I am now going to invite my co-moderator, Rachel, to ask some questions from the audience. And for all of you who have submitted questions, it's been a tremendously successful session. So we are going to run till maybe 1:05 or 1:07 if some of you could stay on.
Great. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you so much to everyone who's putting their questions in the Q&A. And so we have a couple questions from individuals who are interested in, champion and getting this work started in their institutions, wondering a couple things that I'll fold into one question. How could these changes have been made in your institutions without incentives from government policies, or can you speak to that? And also, is this kind of been a bottom-up effort? Can it be achieved top-down, regulation motivated? So you just speak to kind of how the work has evolved and what advice you might have.
I'll start there, Jean. I don't think this work can be successful just top down, and I don't believe it can be successful just bottom up. To be honest with you, Rachel, you need all of the above. And as for government regulation, whether that's your county governments, your local governments, it doesn't matter. I believe we need it all. All incentives help us because it's just been very hard to move the dime, right? To change our bad ways, changing behavior. And that's really what we're talking about doing. And we're trying to help the employees change that behavior and be more sustainable at work. But we actually need them to take that home too. You can't become wasteful at home. So I think as a society, we have to hit it from every side. So we need strong green teams, we need boards that understand, and we need everything in between.
I 100%, Nancy, that really hit it on the head. And for us in New York, I mean, this incentive of needing to reduce our building emissions by a date certain, it was the initiative that we all needed to move it, to get us off the starting line. It's nice to have a carrot, but sometimes you need a stick. And because of that, it opened up a lot of other opportunities for us. And frankly, when there are regulations like that, there are often financial incentives. And that's what we really dug into. We took a lot of time, and we continue to do that, to help pay for some of this work that we know we need to do. Whether it's through your local utility, through foundations, through grants, there's money out there to help, because it's tough. It's a lot of money. It's a hard thing to swallow. but it needs to be done, and especially if there's a requirement from a local government.
Yeah. I just want to add one more thing, Rachel, and I shouldn't, but I have to. This is a museum audience and a cultural resource institution audience. It is very important that an institution also thinks in terms of sustainability programs across all of our missions and all of our work. It has to be embedded in our science. It has to be embedded in our exhibition, in our education programs, as much as those facilities, right? Programs. It cannot just be one little sector of a given cultural institution to think about sustainability.
Agreed.
We have a couple of questions also about resources that might be out there for individuals and museums that are looking to take very first steps. So, a centralized location. Where can people look, and what might be a good first step? One person's asking, an audit is potentially the first step to take. Are there any resources, contacts, or consultants you can suggest? So, yeah, advice around that question.
I wish there was a centralized resource, and that's one of the things I think that collectively we can all do. I know in New York City, we're trying to do that with just the New York City institutions, just to share, who we're working with, who's good, who's not, what's out there. But I think this is the group to be able to share that information. I have a lot of, because we're a year and a half into our plan, I have a lot of consultants that we've worked with and people that we've evaluated. I'm happy to share that information separately offline if somebody wants to reach out to me. I think that might be easier than going through the litany right now.
Yeah, and I think the same. There's listservs out there that you can also get that information off of that would be more regional to help you with those contacts. But there's so many great resources out there. There's no shortage of help. And as for resource dollar wise, I think that goes kind of back to that Jean's comment about, anything where there's you're saving in it, so if you could try to talk your institution into using those savings, whether it's energy savings and being able to use them for other initiatives for your sustainability program, that's one way that you might be able to get some traction within your organization.
The other thing we've learned, in our sustainability journey is just reach out to each other. I mean, it's heartening just how willing everybody is to share information in this sector. Just make a phone call, shoot an email, and people will talk to you. And even if they don't have the right answer, they might know the person that has the answer. So it's been a great group.
Great. Question specifically about the role of sustainability officer. So someone has written that I'm a young professional with a background in collections and would like to continue developing my skills in hopes of being able to take on this role. Do you have recommendations about what someone might be studying or learning in order to, transition into this kind of work?
Well, I think there's actually a lot of really good college programs around sustainability now. And I think if somebody's really serious about transitioning, I would be looking at that as a possibility. We work with some incredible sustainability programs in different colleges and their student programs by offering, an opportunity to be able to do special projects and internships with us. But that's something I would look at on a formal level. If they're not really interested in a degree or a certificate, there's so many on the just within all of the conferences that AAM certainly offers. There's always a sustainability leg to the educational programming. I'm very involved with IAMFA, and of course our programming is very involved around the facilities aspects of sustainability programs. So I think there's just tons of ways to gain knowledge. And then of course we've already talked about individual networking.
And then U.S. Green Building Council just
Yeah,
has
oh,
a
yes.
myriad of information. If you really want to dive in, look at the Lead Green Associate, because that really helps you understand the nitty gritty of sustainable building operations and sustainable design. But Nancy, you're right. There's so much out there.
Yeah.
It could be overwhelming. But whoever that person is, if they want to reach out to Nancy or me directly, I'm going to volunteer you to
Absolutely.
Nancy. We could connect you with some of the things that we're using to learn.
Great. Okay.
And I would say that AM ECN also has a lot of
Of course, right.
great resources as well. So
Great. We probably have time for one more question, Joyce. Let's see here. One person is asking whether you've experienced some pushback from some compromises that have been made to reduce waste or become more sustainable. Can you talk about that aspect of what you've seen happen, if that's been a case in your institutions?
We had a lot of pushback when we took away people's garbage cans.
Mhm.
That was a really big cultural change, which definitely surprised me. And we did it. We had been remote for so long that we implemented it as people were coming back to work, because we felt that might be a good time, because we were used to doing things differently at home. So now, can you continue to do this when you come to work? I mean, you're not leaving your sandwich on your desk in your home office. You take it to the kitchen to throw it out. That was an interesting challenge that took some time to get through, and it impacted our waste stream. It impacted our diversion rates. Yeah, that was. I lost my train of thought. Sorry, because
Yeah.
I keep thinking about, wow,
Yeah.
how shocked I was that people wouldn't give
Yeah.
up their garbage can.
One of our big initiatives has been to eliminate single-use plastics. And of course, we all know, everyone on this call knows how bad they are. And that has been very difficult. We tried within the food service, the gift shops, then we worked on vending machines. And then you had to start thinking in terms of the employee coming in, carrying the single-use plastic from home. So that is another struggle, sort of like our waste program, where it is a work in progress, and we're just not going to stop until we get there. But it has definitely been difficult to get people to change.
But what has been embraced for us is the zero waste around exhibition design. It's really fantastic. There's such an initiative around that and a lot of success.
All right. Well, thank you all. And thanks to everyone who submitted a question. And Joyce, I'll turn it back to you.
well, thank you. I think we had a very, very big content-filled hour that you two were able to share with us. Yes, I think that there are more resources available, and we are looking to continue to communicate with both of you and share best practices. So thank you again for tuning in. We are drawing our webinar to a close. Thank you to all of you who stayed for this hour and the additional Q&A.
Joyce,
Until next time.
thank you for facilitating,
Yeah.
Joyce, and pulling this
Thank you,
together.
Joyce. And be well, everyone.
Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye.